In 1994, an American photographer cycled across China, traveling over 3,000 kilometers from Beijing to Hong Kong, forging enduring friendships along the way. Last year, 27 years later, Peter Crosby did it again along pretty much the same route. And a documentary was made based on his journeys through time and space. So what changed over the years and what haven't? And how different is China seen through his own eyes from what's portrayed in the media? Welcome to this special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin, coming to you from Beijing. I'm pleased to be joined by Peter Crosby from New York City. Good evening, Peter. It's good to have you on the show.
Hello, Liu Xin. How are you?
Good, good. And a happy Chinese New Year in advance, by the way, as we're celebrating the Chinese New Year.
Yes, Year of the Tiger.
Yes, yes. And let's talk a little bit about Tiger Spirit, which is very active and very sportive and curious, of course. And that curiosity probably took you on a 3,000-kilometer plus bike trip, as I said, in 1994, from Beijing to Hong Kong through the interior of China. You are probably one of the few people who have ever done that. So before we go into the questions, let's take a look at what you saw in 1994.
In 1994, that I wanted to tell the story of crossing China was because I was living in Tokyo and then Hong Kong. It was clear to me that so many Westerners they didn't understand the transformation, how China was starting to grow and open up. It was a very exciting time.
Amazing stuff, even for us Chinese. It feels like, last century or something. But tell us a little bit, what kind of impact did the journey have on your impression and understanding of China back then?
Well, the purpose of my journey in 1994 was because I was living in Asia for 8 years as a photojournalist and started to recognize that people in America and in the West didn't know anything about China. I mean, in 1994, here's China growing. I'd visited 5 or 6 times, and so I wanted more people to understand what was the center of China like. What was really the belly of the dragon is what I call it. What's really the heart and soul of China? So I was able to ride in very, very rural areas. It took quite a while because the roads were not very good or under construction.
How did it impact your understanding of the country?
So the biggest takeaway that I had from my 1994 journey was how hard people in the center of China were still working and how innovative they were in creating little new businesses and little new farm ways of working, and how did they transport crops. And things were very, very exciting for people, but there was still a lot of limitations. It was still very basic, and it was a lot slower. Right? Life was just slower. And so we were able to stop and talk with people. And the takeaway for me from the center of China especially was most of those people had not seen a foreigner. So I was very unusual. I was like, I was a spectacle. And everyone wanted to see me and couldn't believe that I could speak Chinese. And so that innocence, that desire to communicate, that kind of generosity of spirit was what I took away in 1994.
I could imagine, how much it would have been interesting for both sides, right? But 27 years later, a lot of things happened, a lot of things changed. What made you want to do that journey again and, along the same route you took many years ago?
Well, the purpose I mentioned in 1994, that the United States and many people in the West just didn't know much about China. Well, what I see happening is people still don't know very much about China, but they've made opinions about China which are not necessarily accurate, and I think in some ways very dangerous. And so it felt even more urgent at 66 years old to come and do this now, because somebody's got to create more bridges and more communication. That's what I hope that we can show.
Right. Well, it must have been challenging because you were doing this, against the backdrop of COVID-19, but you managed it. And I don't know how you managed it, but congratulations on that. So share with us some of the most impressive, most interesting moments that stayed in your mind from the second trip especially.
Gosh, I mean, there's so many. I was able to participate in a lot of events and arts and things that were both traditional and still very modern. The Shaanxi opera that I had seen in 1994 in a very rural community, here I was able to meet and study with a master of that art who travels around the world. He does 300 performances a year of this art. And that was really, for me, that was really such a special privilege, and it was a lot of fun, right? We got to have our faces made up and be able to play. I was able to play Guanyin, the famous war general, and
Guan Yu.
And to be
the big knives.
The big knives, and to be be ferocious. So that was great fun. It was also important for me to see old friends from 1994. So I was able to find and see two old friends from Badong in Hubei province, the Liu family, and then also to find an old friend in Yangshuo, a woman who used to run a little cafe in 1994, and now she has a 30 room hotel, very, very, very nice hotel. So those are three of the most important moments for me.
Let's take a look at this video clip where you just mentioned, actually. We also picked that out because I think that is very, very interesting. Let's take a look at this video clip here.
Then get a chance to hang out with Master Wu. So he's playing a very serious role, but he's very playful. And so we could play together. And that's what, for me at least, that's part of why this was so enjoyable. We just got to play. Yeah. Okay, hold on. 3, 3. But I lost my pose.
How did it feel? How did it feel to have your face painted and to do all of that? Did you feel you were kind of transformed into another, persona, another life or something?
Well, part of the experience was learning the history of the character. And then meeting the master and how he embodied that traditional character. And he was a very graceful, very powerful man. And so we were able to have a great connection. And it became playful. It was just something that he does every day that I do once in a lifetime, being painted, costumed, and now being able to shake the sword. Yeah. We had a connection as artists that was really quite strong.
Yeah. I noticed when you talk about being playful, I noticed something about you and about your documentaries is you are able to have fun, despite despite the circumstances. For instance, when you went when you went into this hot springs, when you you go on a steep slope, you're able to discover the flowers and things like that. Is it your personality that makes it so, or is it the environment, the country that you're in? Share with us a little bit, on that side.
So one of the things that I've always loved about China is the way that people share common space, parks, and even under a bridge, right? People will be playing music, they'll be dancing, they'll be playing badminton, they may have, the snapping whip and the big dreidel. I mean, some very remarkable things are going on in the public parks, singing opera, singing traditional songs. And so that to me is very outgoing and very playful. And when people are out there, most of the times people will invite me in to dance or to play, or I can take photographs with them and we can have a nice interaction. I'm not just I'm making photos with people, right? So part of that is the interaction that we have of playing and giving and taking that I think ends up being much more lively, much more interesting photos.
Absolutely. And you were constantly, while interacting them, you were recording their lives and you were observing their minds, observing their lives as well. Comparing the two journeys 27 years apart, what have changed and what haven't changed about Chinese life?
The biggest change for me, it's one thing to see the photos and understand how much Shanghai and Shenzhen have changed and Beijing. But because I'm a bicyclist, right, what I see is the roads, right? In 1994, we were riding on concrete roads, broken roads, dirt and gravel roads. Most of the time they were one or two lanes, right? They weren't very big. And so now the roads are gorgeous. They're absolutely fabulous. And the super highways were not what we were riding, but, we could go through a village and come out through a very long tunnel and there would be a super highway or there would be a new airport. So the roads were very different for me. Also, I traveled a lot in China by train, right? I mean, we all have. And that was always such a beautiful interactive experience, especially if you were going hard seat, right? And not doing
the hard seats grain trains.
Yes, exactly. When you got to the countryside, it was harder to make reservations. Also, as a foreigner, it was more difficult, more complicated to, and so you just end up saying, whatever seat I can get, I'll go. And so that obviously has changed. I mean, it's phenomenal that China has built 20,000 kilometers of high-speed trains in 12 years. I mean, it's mind-boggling to an American. I mean, to Europeans and other countries where they have high-speed service, but to an American, it's just it's unimaginable.
Peter, honestly, it is even unimaginable for many Chinese as well. And for me, who grew up, because my father worked in the railway, and I grew up, literally played next to the railway tracks. For me to see, the trains and think about the kind of trains we had in our childhood is still surreal. I tell you, it's still surreal. Another thing I have to mention, because I also originally come from Hubei, where you spent a long time, and this ship cruise that you took in 1994. And I was just watching this, and I thinking to myself, I was probably on the same time on another boat, exactly there, because I did a trip, and I knew exactly what you were talking about. These boats, very primitive, and people they had no idea what a comfortable, sleek, modern cruise ship would be like, right? So you had this experience. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, these boats, the I mean, they were called ferries. I can't remember in Chinese, but they would go from port to port, city to city. They were the primary transport for many, many people. There weren't all these bridges, right? Especially over the Yangtze. They're just people, there weren't even very many roads along the way. So this is how people transported their goods to market, to the next big city. They may be bringing oranges. They may be bringing pigs or coal. And that would all come onto the ferry.
Yeah.
And that would all get off by hand at the next port, at the next station. Not many people were actually on there as tourists. So I was kind of unusual. And again, one of the things, having come back this year and done the cruise again, obviously it's very different. But the biggest difference, one of the biggest differences for me is the color of the water. Because in 1994, it was like masala tea.
Okay.
It's a very deep brown orange, right? And now it's really kind of a very light brown. It's a very different, and obviously the river is not as swift. It's not as deep. There's a lot more traffic on it. And the formality of these big tourist boats, especially. You know, it was almost like a carnival cruise out at sea. So that's not really my style.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but we love atmosphere. We love, hecticness, activity. So,
yeah.
So were you saying, did you find that the water quality and the mountains, the ecosystem along the river, did you find a positive change, or it's pretty much the same as before, or has it gotten worse?
Well, I mean, it's really hard to evaluate, right? Clearly the Three Gorges are not as deep, right? And there's more room for navigation, so there's more ships. I know my friend, the Liu family, that they live in Badong, which is right on the river. And that area of Hubei has had a lot of problems with landslides. And I know along the river that that's been an issue, not just in Badong, but in different places, because, the water table wasn't 200 feet higher, wasn't 150 meters higher. So that's been something that they've had to negotiate there. They've actually moved part of the town. They're actually going to move part of the town across the river because it's not as steep. That's the only one that I know specifically, and that's because of my friends, the Liu family.
Yeah. Well, you have mentioned the Liu family time and again. I think I have to show a little bit the clip of your encounters with them both times. Let's take a look.
你来，休息一下，非常漂亮。现在我不太胖。
像你年轻的时候的那个瘦的有点像了，37、8岁嘛那个时候，我们认识的时候。
I met them when they lived in a dirt house. The meal they prepared was so it's like a 春节。如果这个是特别不好做，我们回来。好。OK， 1、2、3，茄子。
当时呢也没有那个想着他还会找我，他就是知恩图报的人，就是这点好，所以和他是好朋友。
给你我的爱。Felt like we were brothers. 哥哥弟弟。2、3、4，茄子，还有茄子，还有茄子。
So this Liu family, very generous, and Brother Liu have obviously forged a bond with you. You call each other brothers. And as we are celebrating the Chinese Spring Festival, did you have the opportunity to spend some time with them for holidays, during the Spring
Yes,
Festival?
I have. I've been, once I was able to find them in 2017, which was surprisingly easy because of Weixin.
Yes.
Right?
WeChat, the Chinese
We were able to,
social media application, yes.
WeChat is amazing and it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And once I was able to find them, and the backstory is that they lived in a dirt house. I mean, they're Tujiaoren, right? They are literally one of the 56 minorities. And they lived in a dirt house, and they had no electricity. And they took me in for a night because it was raining and cold. And they prepared a meal like a Thanksgiving, like a chunjie meal, right? With pork and cabbage. And they had to borrow the meat. They had to borrow the pork. And they were so generous, Yushin. I've kept that example of generosity and told that story time and time again because I've never invited perfect strangers in from the street to give them a huge meal and to have them sleep in my children's bed. And they wouldn't allow us I could not give them money, right? They would not.
Wouldn't take it.
They wouldn't take it. And some of their friends criticized them, I came to learn later, because come on, these people have money. So for me, to be able to go back and find them and throw the biggest hotel banquet that I could for the whole family to say thank you, it was deeply gratifying for me. It was redemption for Ying Hao, for Mr. Liu, Papa Liu I call him. It was really quite a moment because he had felt like his honor was at stake. And to come back and be respected and be saluted it felt good for all of us. They no longer live in a dirt house way up in the mountains. They live in an apartment building. I mean, it's a walk-up apartment building, but they have a completely different standard of life. So Chunjie, because of Xinguanbingdu, because of COVID this year, again, will be strange, right? It will be distanced. Most people are living in their small family units. Yeah. I mean, Papa Liu has 6 brothers in the area in Hubei province. So when I was there for Chunjie, we were able to go and visit each of the brothers and the family and have a little party at each one. And one of the parties actually was, we have the same birthday, the same year, the same birthday. But his is the lunar calendar, February 16th, and mine is the Gregorian calendar.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Exactly.
We said we're having the same birthday, so we had the hats with the frosting on the face, you know, Xing Ri Kuai Le, you know. That's great fun.
Yeah. So nice to hear all of that. So I know, so both journeys, it was a 2-month track last year, and a 4-part documentary was made about it, and it's now available online. And your rarity, again, every time I think about it, you know, given the kind of relationship between the two countries, kind of rhetoric that's being thrown, you know, on the political side. But you said in the documentary that much of the misunderstanding of China is because people don't know many basic things about China. I really want to play this part a little bit. Let's take a look.
China's people are still the same, and there's no difference between what they want. My thinking is that much of this misunderstanding is ignorance. People just don't know. They just don't know many basic things about China. The thing that's more important to me is not to show the difference, but to show how similar we are.
So, Peter, help us understand a bit better. What are these basic things, and how do you think, what can be done to help people understand these basic things?
Gosh, that's the big question, right? so American culture or Western culture was so influential in the opening up of China and those 40 years, right? So most Chinese people have a very good sense and understanding of American or Western culture, of history, of, popular culture, of big movie stars. But in America or in the West, very few people even understand the dynasties or understand that the Communist Party won a revolution in 1949, and that's why they're still in business. And the understanding of what communism is in America has been tainted and used only for political purposes. We used to call it red baiting. And in China, you ask people, or I ask people, how do you feel about the government? And, of course we have cameras there also, so people are very positive. But genuinely, people have faith. They have confidence in the government. And I think that's one thing is very eroded here. And so people then do not believe that people in China can possibly believe in this, authoritarian communist party. That's the rhetoric, right? But, if you go back and you look at Confucian and the Analects and you understand the father figure of the emperor and the structure of how the Communist Party works, level by level by level of meritocracy, down to your local committee in Beijing where I was living. We had a local committee in our apartment complex, and when when COVID hit, they were very, very effective. Yeah. So it's all the way up, 90 million people. It's not 1.4 billion people. And so these are some of the facets I try and help explain.
Yeah.
How to do it better? Oh, Lord, I just...
Don't worry about that. We take a small step at a time, right?
What's important to me, and I think to many people who have experiences living in China, that this rhetoric not become more and more dangerous.
Yeah.
And so this question of how to communicate, how to create bridges is something I'm going to continue to work on. I hope to bring some of the Chinese bicyclists that I met during this journey last year to America, to bicycle across America with some Chinese Americans and just see what their experience is.
Because you think it is also important the other way around for the Chinese people to understand America, the belly of America.
I'm saying the belly of the eagle, but it's not very catchy.
But the belly of America kind of captures. So
I have to work on. We'll find something else. But the assumption from outside of America is that America is violent and dysfunctional and racist in these attributes, which we see on the media, but they're not pervasive throughout the country. And so I want to ride through the middle of the country because in my heart of hearts, just like in China, I know that regular people are generous, they're open, they're funny, and that's what I want to share.
Yeah.
The warmth of people to people.
Absolutely. So you don't want to bring them to the belly of America, you want to bring them to the heart of America.
Nicely put.
Okay, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation, Peter Crosby. And I wish you all the very best in what you can do. Basically, we share the same ideals and see the same mission, right, to help bridge people understand each other better. It's not just about politics and harsh rhetorics. Life is about much more. Yeah.
It has to be about understanding and the common ground.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. Peter, we're running out of time. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
I really enjoyed this.
Happy the Year of the Tiger. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that was my interview with Peter Crosby, who twice bicycled all the way across China from Beijing to Hong Kong. And with that, we come to the end of this special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. Thanks for watching. Once again, Happy Chinese New Year.